Ladies and gentlemen, change is not a mystery, it is a principle, and the principle is this: nothing changes in your life until your mind changes. You can shout, pray, fast, relocate, and blame everyone around you. But if your thinking remains the same, your results will not change. The greatest battle on earth is not political. It is not economic. It is not even social. The greatest battlefield is the mind, because whoever controls your mind controls your life. Every system you see, governments, schools, religions, economies, functions by influencing how people think. The enemy doesn't need to destroy you physically if he can defeat you mentally, because a defeated mind will sabotage even the most gifted body. Your mind is your world. It is the lens through which you see reality. If the lens is dirty, the whole world looks dark. That's why the first thing God targets when he wants to transform you is not your situation. It's your mind. The scripture doesn't say, be transformed by changing your location. It says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That's a law. You can put a slave in a palace, and if his mind is still enslaved, he will turn the palace into a prison. But give a free mind to a man in a prison, and he will turn that cell into a classroom. Why? Because you don't live in the place you're in. You live in the mindset you have. Friends, if you want to rise above where you are, you must change how you think. You must break the limitations that culture placed on you. Challenge the lies that experience taught you, and confront the excuses that fear whispered to you. The most dangerous person in the world is not the one with power, it's the one with a renewed mind, because a changed mind cannot be controlled by old systems. That's why Jesus didn't come to start a religion. He came to introduce a kingdom, and the first message of that kingdom was, repent. Not cry, not kneel, not sing. Repent, which means change your mind. A new season requires a new mindset. Some of you are asking God for promotion, but your thoughts are still in poverty. You are praying for love, but your mind is filled with bitterness. You want success, but your thinking is ruled by fear. You cannot enter new dimensions with old decisions. Change doesn't begin with your environment. It begins with your mindset. The mind is the control center of your entire life. It is not your environment, your education, or even your relationships that determine your destiny. It is your mindset. Everything that happens in your life begins as a thought. Every decision you've made, every habit you've formed, every path you've taken was first conceived in your mind. Your mind is the manufacturing plant of your future. That is why your life can never rise above the level of your thoughts. You will never live consistently in a reality that your mind does not first embrace. People spend years trying to change their circumstances without ever changing their thoughts, and they end up in cycles of frustration, repeating the same patterns, facing the same walls, experiencing the same limitations, because they have not understood that change doesn't begin outside of you, it begins within. You can change your clothes, your house, your job, or even your friends. But if your thinking remains the same, your life will eventually fall back into the same results. That is because the mind governs the body, the emotions, the decisions, and ultimately the outcomes. The greatest tragedy is not an uneducated person. It is a person with a brilliant mind that has been programmed to think in fear, in failure, or in limitation. You are not what you do. You are not even what you feel. You are what you think. Proverbs teaches that as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. That is not a metaphor, that is a law just as real and dependable as gravity. You don't break laws, you either cooperate with them or suffer their consequences. The law of the mind dictates that your internal world creates your external reality. This is why so many people remain stuck despite having access to better tools, better opportunities, or better connections. You can give a person all the resources in the world, but if their mind is still governed by poverty, insecurity, or self-doubt, they will sabotage the very opportunities meant to elevate them. You can take someone out of a toxic environment, but if the toxicity has already taken root in their thinking, they will replicate that environment wherever they go. The mind has the power to produce, to limit, to expand, or to destroy everything in your life. That is how powerful it is. That is why true change must always begin there. The mind is not simply a place of memory. It is the soil of imagination, the engine of belief, and the battleground of destiny. Every lie you've believed, every fear you've entertained, every doubt that has paralyzed you, none of those things were real until you gave them permission to live in your thoughts. The mind does not just reflect reality, it creates it. You can tell how a person thinks by looking at their habits, their relationships, and their priorities. You don't need to hear what they believe, you only need to watch how they behave, because the behavior is always a mirror of the belief. Until you take control of your thoughts, your life will always be at the mercy of your circumstances. The mind was not created to be passive, it was created to lead. If you don't lead your thoughts will be led by your past, your fears, and your failures. The greatest gift God gave humanity after the gift of life is the gift of choice. But choice is only as powerful as the clarity of thought behind it. If your thoughts are unclear, your choices will be unstable. If your mind is undisciplined, your life will be unpredictable. This is why mental renewal is not optional, it is essential. The quality of your thoughts determines the quality of your life. If you want to elevate your living, you must elevate your thinking. If you want to take control of your future, you must first take control of your thoughts. External change follows internal shift. This is a foundational principle of life that cannot be bypassed or ignored. People often look to the outside world, trying to manipulate circumstances, rearrange relationships, or chase opportunities in hopes of achieving a better outcome. But the real axis of transformation is not external, it is internal. What happens around you will always be shaped by what is happening within you. A person may alter their environment, relocate to another city, start a new relationship, or begin a new job. But if their internal state remains unchanged, they will recreate the same challenges they thought they left behind. This is because your external life is a projection of your internal reality. We are conditioned to believe that if we can just get out of our current situation, if we can get more money, a better title, more recognition, or more freedom, then we will finally feel satisfied and successful. But true change is not a matter of geography, status, or possessions. It is a matter of transformation at the core of who you are. A new setting cannot produce a new you unless there is a shift in how you think, how you perceive, and how you interpret life. If you carry the same mindset into a new season, you will contaminate the new with the dysfunction of the old. That is why so many people repeat the same relational patterns, the same financial mistakes, the same emotional triggers, even after making major changes in their external world. The problem is not the situation. It is the system of thought operating beneath the surface. Transformation is not cosmetic, it is foundational. You cannot rearrange the furniture in a house that has a cracked foundation and expect the building to be secure. In the same way, you cannot rearrange the components of your life, your schedule, your relationships, your goals, without addressing the foundation of your thinking. Until there is a renovation of the mind, there can be no sustainable progress. Real growth does not start with action. It starts with awareness, and that awareness must confront the limitations that have been built into your belief system through culture, upbringing, fear, trauma, or past experience. Your mindset serves as the operating system for your life. Just like a phone cannot function beyond the limits of its software, your life cannot go beyond the limitations of your mental programming. And just like outdated software produces glitches, lags, and crashes, outdated thinking produces confusion, stagnation, and self-sabotage. In order to move into a new dimension of living, you must upgrade the way you process information, make decisions, and understand your identity. It is not enough to learn new skills. You must adopt a new lens through which to interpret your experiences and possibilities. That is why the inner shift is always more powerful than the outer one. When your perspective changes, your posture changes. When your thoughts change, your choices change, and when your beliefs change, your behavior follows. People who are internally transformed carry the power to reshape their environments rather than be shaped by them. They become thermostats, not thermometers. They set the temperature instead of reacting to it. This level of mastery is only possible when the inner man is renewed, disciplined, and aligned with truth. Because whatever is dominant in your mind will become visible in your life. Even the best opportunities will be wasted by an unprepared mind. Even the greatest blessings will become burdens to someone who lacks the mental structure to sustain them. It is not that some people are unlucky or less favored. It is often that their internal reality is not equipped to support the external change they desire. Until the mind is aligned with growth, progress becomes temporary and exhausting. The internal shift is the fuel of external transformation. Without it, success is unsustainable and peace is unattainable. The transformation of circumstances must begin with the transformation of consciousness. Change must first be believed before it can be built. Old thinking sustains old habits. You cannot walk into a new future carrying the mindset of your past. The habits you practice every day are not isolated behaviors. They are deeply rooted in the way you think. Before a habit is formed in your actions, it is first constructed in your thoughts. That is why change cannot be maintained until it is first conceived in the mind. If your thinking stays the same, your behavior will always return to what is familiar. Habits are sustained by mental agreements, silent contracts you have made with your beliefs about what is normal, what is possible, and what is necessary. As long as those agreements remain unchallenged, your habits will not change. Most people try to break bad habits through sheer willpower. They push themselves to act differently while still thinking the same way. That effort is rarely successful because the root system of their actions is left untouched. Habits are the fruit, thought patterns are the root. You can cut the branches off a tree, but unless the root is removed, the tree will grow back. In the same way, you can stop a behavior temporarily, but unless you change the thought that gave birth to it, the behavior will return. Old thinking creates a cycle, one that repeats itself no matter how many times you try to start over. The reason some people find themselves stuck in the same patterns year after year is not because they lack motivation, but because they have not disrupted the belief systems that give those patterns power. Change that does not address thinking is only cosmetic. Real transformation happens when the mind is renewed. That's why someone can go to a seminar, get inspired, feel motivated for a week, and then fall back into their old ways. The spark of inspiration is not enough. It must be followed by a shift in how you see yourself, how you interpret the world, and how you define your values. Until you think differently, you will always default to what you know, and what you know becomes the foundation of your habits. Habits do not just appear. They are rehearsed, repeated, and reinforced by thought. Some habits are born from fear, others from survival, and still others from identity confusion. If you see yourself as unworthy, your habits will reflect that belief in the form of neglect, self-sabotage, or procrastination. If you think life is unsafe, your habits will reflect that in constant over-preparation or avoidance. Old habits are not just a behavioral issue. They are a thinking issue. The way you interpret situations, the narrative you replay in your mind, and the internal dialogue you have with yourself all determine whether you break free or stay bound. This is why it is possible to have the right goals but the wrong mindset. You can aim for excellence while still thinking in terms of survival. You can talk about vision while still reacting based on fear. This contradiction creates tension within the soul, and that tension wears you down until you collapse back into the comfort of what is familiar. Familiarity is not a function of safety, it is a function of repetition. And what you repeat becomes your reality, even if it is painful. Many people are trapped in cycles they hate because those cycles feel familiar, and the mind prefers the familiar over the unfamiliar, even if the unfamiliar holds freedom. To truly break free from old habits, the mind must be re-educated. You must expose yourself to new ways of thinking, question the assumptions you inherited, and confront the mental scripts that play in the background of your daily life. Every lasting change in behavior is the result of a new conclusion the mind has reached. When you change how you think about time, you change how you use it. When you change how you think about your body, you change how you treat it. When you change how you think about purpose, you change how you prioritize. The mind must be taught to see beyond what it has always known, because only then can the body follow into what it has never experienced. Belief systems dictate behavior. Everything you do, whether consciously or unconsciously, is rooted in what you believe to be true. Behavior is not random. It flows out of conviction. If someone believes they are unworthy of love, they will behave in ways that repel intimacy, even if they desire connection. If someone believes success is only for certain kinds of people, they will unconsciously sabotage their own progress to remain in alignment with that internal belief. Your actions always reveal your assumptions. You do not act according to what you say you believe. You act according to what your heart has accepted as truth. Beliefs are not just intellectual ideas. They are internal laws, silent rules that govern the direction of your life. These belief systems are often formed early in life. They are shaped by family, culture, religion, trauma, and experience. Over time, these influences build a framework in your mind that defines what is possible, what is acceptable, and what is realistic. That framework becomes your reference point for every decision you make. If you believe that money is evil, you will never pursue financial growth with a clear conscience. If you believe that authority is always abusive, you will resist leadership roles or relationships that require submission. If you believe that failure defines you, you will avoid risks, opportunities, and challenges. These beliefs are not always examined, yet they operate with immense power. What you believe about yourself, about people, and about life determines the quality and direction of your behavior. People often try to change behavior without ever questioning the beliefs beneath it. They focus on modifying habits, routines, and outcomes, not realizing that these external expressions are symptoms of an internal belief system. If you want to change the fruit, you have to change the root. Until a belief is addressed, the behavior it produces will persist. That is why superficial changes rarely last. A person can try to act confident, but if they still believe they are inferior, that belief will eventually override the performance. A person can try to manage their time better, but if they believe their work has no purpose, they will keep falling into procrastination. The behavior always returns to its belief. Belief systems can be empowering or limiting. An empowering belief gives you the courage to act, the clarity to decide, and the consistency to grow. A limiting belief becomes a ceiling, keeping you beneath your potential. Many people live under ceilings they did not create, ceilings built by the words of others, the pain of past failures, or the fear of what might go wrong. These internal ceilings are often invisible but deeply felt. They manifest as hesitation, self-doubt, inconsistency, and insecurity. And yet, once identified and replaced, these beliefs can be dismantled and new behaviors can emerge. Changing a belief system requires more than positive thinking. It requires truth. Only truth has the power to displace a lie. If someone has believed they are a failure because of a mistake, no amount of motivation will change that belief until they encounter the truth that their identity is not defined by performance. If someone has believed they are cursed because of their background, they must be taught the truth about their inherent value and the power of choice. The mind cannot reject a lie unless it is presented with a greater truth. And once the truth is received, behavior begins to change effortlessly. What once felt like a struggle becomes natural because the foundation has shifted. Behavior always reveals belief. If you change the belief, the behavior must follow. This is why transformation begins with internal revelation, not external imitation. You cannot imitate your way into lasting change, you must believe your way into it. Once your beliefs align with truth, your actions will begin to reflect that alignment in every area of your life. Belief is the seed, behavior is the fruit. To grow a different harvest, you must plant a different seed. Environment doesn't guarantee change. You can change your scenery, shift your surroundings, and upgrade your lifestyle. But unless your inner world is transformed, the external shift will not produce lasting results. People often believe that if they can just leave their current situation, move to a new city, switch jobs, start fresh in a new relationship, they will automatically become different. But environment only reveals who you are. It does not change who you are. A toxic mindset will poison even the most promising setting. You can take a person out of a problem, but if the problem is inside their mind, they will recreate it wherever they go. The environment may influence, but it does not define. You are not limited by where you come from, but you can be limited by how you think about where you come from. If you grew up around fear, doubt, and limitation, those things do not automatically follow you into a new space unless you carry them in your thoughts. You can move into a luxurious home and still feel insecure. You can work in a prestigious organization and still think like a failure. You can travel the world and still be imprisoned by your past. A new address doesn't rewrite your identity. Real change is not geographical, it is psychological. Many people look to change their environment because it gives the illusion of progress. Moving somewhere new feels like movement forward, and in some cases it can create a temporary shift in energy or perspective. But if you do not also examine and address the mindset that brought you into dysfunction, you will attract the same patterns in a different place. People carry energy, people carry beliefs, and people carry cycles. If you do not break the cycle in your mind, it will reappear in your future. The environment may change the scenery, but only a renewed mind can change the script. This is why some people find themselves in a better place, but still living with the same frustration. It's not that the new job or relationship or community is the same as the last. It's that their thinking has not caught up with the new opportunity. They respond to new moments with old mindsets. They manage new blessings with old habits. They interpret new experiences through old fears, and in doing so, they limit what the new environment was meant to produce. Environments can open doors, but only mindset can walk through them effectively. Every environment contains potential, but only those who are mentally prepared can extract the full value of that potential. You can place a seed in fertile ground, but if the seed has been damaged or undeveloped, it will not grow properly. In the same way, your mind is the seed and your environment is the soil. The soil alone cannot determine your harvest. The quality of the seed matters just as much. If your thinking is healthy, you can thrive even in a place others consider dry. If your thinking is broken, you can wither even in a place full of opportunity. Environments are important. They can support growth, foster development, and expose you to new possibilities. But they are not a substitute for inner work. You must carry the mindset that matches the environment you want to succeed in. A poor mindset in a rich environment will produce poverty. A fearful mindset in a secure environment will produce anxiety. A defeated mindset in a victorious environment will still lead to loss. Change that is only external is temporary and often superficial. The real breakthrough comes when the internal transformation aligns with the external opportunity. When the mind is transformed, the environment becomes a stage for expansion rather than a crutch for survival. A changed mind knows how to interpret, adapt, and thrive regardless of surroundings. It stops blaming circumstances and begins building solutions. It no longer depends on conditions to dictate progress because it carries the power to create change from the inside out. This is the difference between those who are empowered and those who are trapped by their surroundings. The empowered understand that the greatest shift happens first within. Renewing the mind is not an event, it is a process. Transformation begins when a person commits to the daily discipline of changing the way they think. This renewal does not happen overnight. It is not the result of a single moment of inspiration or a fleeting emotional experience. It is the slow, deliberate rewiring of thought patterns that have been built over years, sometimes decades. Most people want to see rapid change in their lives, but few are willing to endure the mental discipline required to shift their thinking at the foundational level. This is not about memorizing quotes or repeating affirmations. It is about confronting lies, challenging assumptions, and intentionally constructing a new internal framework that can support a higher level of living. The mind is like a garden. Whatever you plant will grow. If you allow weeds of fear, doubt, and negativity to take root, they will choke out your ability to think clearly, act boldly, and move forward with purpose. But if you are intentional about sowing thoughts of truth, vision, and discipline, the harvest will reflect that investment. Just as no farmer expects fruit the day after planting, renewing the mind requires patience and consistency. You must become a steward of your thoughts, examining where they come from, what they produce, and whether they align with the future you desire. Most people do not realize that their thoughts are not neutral. Every thought is either constructing or deconstructing your future. Every time you agree with fear, you give it permission to shape your decisions. Every time you entertain limitation, you reinforce the ceiling above your potential. The mind must be trained to think on purpose. Left alone, it will drift toward what is familiar, even if that familiarity is unhealthy. Renewal requires resistance to old patterns, to cultural conditioning, and to the voice of past failures. It means interrupting the automatic responses and replacing them with intentional perspectives. A renewed mind thinks differently about problems. Where an untrained mind sees obstacles, a renewed mind sees opportunities. Where others see impossibility, a renewed mind sees strategy. The difference is not in the environment, it is in the interpretation. Renewal changes how you interpret feedback, how you process rejection, and how you respond to failure. It gives you a new lens, a new narrative, and a new approach to life. This mental shift affects everything: your work ethic, your relationships, your health, your finances, your spiritual life. Nothing remains untouched when the mind is transformed. Renewal also demands unlearning. You must unlearn the lies you were taught, the fears you adopted, and the limits you assumed were truth. Many people are not blocked by lack of information. They are blocked by misinformation. They believe they can only go so far, do so much, or be a certain kind of person because of the programming they received through experiences, voices of authority, or personal failure. These beliefs must be uprooted, examined, and replaced with truth. Unlearning is uncomfortable because it requires humility. It requires you to admit that some of what you have believed has been wrong. But until you let go of the old, the new cannot fully take root. The mind must be exposed to new information consistently. Books, teachings, conversations, and intentional reflection become tools in this process. Just as muscles must be exercised regularly to grow strong, the mind must be stretched by new ideas, challenged by higher thoughts, and guided by disciplined focus. Renewal is not a passive act, it is active engagement with your inner world. It demands that you take full responsibility for what you think, how you think, and why you think it. You must be willing to silence the noise around you so that you can hear the truth within you. The process is not always easy, but it is always worth it because the quality of your life is the direct result of the quality of your thoughts. True and lasting change begins not with new surroundings, more resources, or better opportunities, but with a renewed mind. Until your thinking changes, nothing in your life will change permanently. You may shift locations, change habits, or set new goals, but without transforming your mindset, you will always return to familiar patterns. Every cycle you break, every level you rise to, every dream you realize starts with how you think. Your mind is the master key that unlocks your future. Change it, and your world will follow. The moment you choose to take authority over your thoughts, confront your beliefs, and rewire your internal framework, you take the first step toward becoming the person your future requires. Because nothing changes until your mind changes.